Welcome to the presentation. Today's presentation is going to be on winter driving, and at the end of the presentation we'll have a quiz, about 15 questions which hopefully will show your knowledge on winter driving. So, moving on to the first slide. Driving in the winter is obviously very, very different to driving at other times of year. And we're already starting to see, this is mid-November now, so the clocks have changed and we're driving in darker conditions, but also we are now starting to see more adverse weather conditions in the forms of rain and storms that are causing flooding. And obviously in the north of the country we might find snow, and in Scotland we might find snow, and the weather is forecast to get colder, so we'll probably be experiencing icy conditions as well. And all of those things mean that we need to adapt our driving for the hazards that we're actually going to see on the roads. Now, the obvious advice is sometimes those conditions can be so extreme, so prolonged, and with flooding that we've had recently, so severe that you may want to consider not making the journey, avoiding driving completely. A lot of people now are working at home, and a lot of employers are accepting people working at home now. So if you don't need to make the journey, then please avoid making that journey unless it's absolutely necessary in bad weather conditions. Now, having said that, different weather conditions can create different hazards, and at different times of the winter, and in different areas of the country. Like I said, in the north they're more susceptible to ice and snow. In the south of the country, in the UK, we're not susceptible to deep snow. We do get snow occasionally, but we do get quite a lot of rain, especially this year, and we do get icy conditions. The thing to remember is that each individual single journey can be completely different and throw up a number of different hazards. Even if you're travelling along the same road, the journey from one day to the next will be completely different, and you need to realise that and adapt your driving to the road conditions that are there at the time. You need to be prepared for driving in icy weather, foggy weather, when it's raining. And so the key message here is that we need to adapt our driving to the conditions that we find when we're on our journey. Now, thinking about that, we can obviously do what we call our pre-drive checks, and there's another video on pre-drive checks if you would like to see that. We can remember it very quickly through the term powdery, which is propellant. Make sure you've got enough propellant for the journey you're going to undertake. So petrol, diesel or electric charge now with electric vehicles. Check your oil, check the water in your windscreen wipers. Look on your car to see if there are any damage that's going to be a hazard for you or other road users. Check all your electrics, and that's headlights, dipped headlights, indicators, brake lights, and the lights that illuminate your rear number plate. And make sure they are all in working order, but also that they are clear and can be seen. So that's the electrics. Obviously, a really important thing during the winter months, especially with water and ice on the road and snow, is to make sure your tyres are in really good condition. So checking the tyres to make sure there are no bulges or cuts in the sidewall. Checking that the tread depth is at least, well, a 1.6 millimetre is the legal limit, but preferably much more than that, especially in wet and icy conditions. And that the tyres are all correctly inflated. And remember, that does include the spare tyre that you'll be carrying in the boot. if you've got normal tyres. If you've got run flats, obviously that won't be appropriate, but you will need a kit if you've got run flat tyres. And the last one of that is actually checking on you. How do you feel? Are you tired? Have you got a cold? Are you under the weather? Are you stressed? Have you had a bad day? It all affects the way that you will actually drive. It's also very important to plan your journey so that you're not rushing, especially in winter conditions. You do not want to be rushing to your destination, so plan well ahead, and we'll talk more about that later on. So preparing your vehicle, like I say, ensure that all your lights are working and that they are clean and visible by other road users. Ensure that your battery is fully charged, that your windscreen is clear, so that's your front windscreen and the whole of the front windscreen, your rear screen if you've got one, and ensure that if you are clearing off snow, that you clear snow and ice from every piece of glass and the top of your car as well, because we don't want you to be driving off and then suddenly have a load of snow fall onto the windscreen and impair your visibility of the road. Check your wiper blades and make sure that they are in good condition, they're not perished and they are working properly. Check all your windows are clean, and like I say, make sure your washer bottle is filled and you've got screen wash in there. So it's especially important that we don't let the water in the washer bottles actually become frozen. Now you can buy the actual screen wash already made up with antifreeze, or you can buy it as a concentrate which you then dilute with just ordinary water. So make sure that you have got water in there and it is available to use. And that's both front and back. And remember, some cars do have different reservoirs for front and back of the car. They both need to be full. I've talked about tyre conditions and I've talked about tread depth and the tyre pressures, and they are really important because they are your only contact with the road. You do need to make sure they're in good condition. You need to check that your brakes are working and that all the fluids that are required in your car are topped up. And we've talked about windscreen wash already. So make sure your vehicle is prepared for the journey that you're about to undertake. It is really important because that vehicle needs to have all of its functions available to you when you're actually making your journey, especially in bad weather. So if you do find yourself driving in snow or on icy roads or on snow-covered roads, like we said, you need to adapt your driving. Well, how do you need to adapt your driving? One of the biggest issues, of course, is speed. You need to reduce your speed because the actual chances of skidding on icy roads and snowy roads is much, much greater than on good condition dry roads. And of course, because of that as well, your stopping distance will increase massively. And on good dry condition roads, we would apply the 2-second rule for that gap that we leave in front of us. So only a fool breaks the 2-second rule. There's a video on that on the channel if you want to look at that as well. In icy and snowy conditions, that can be a 10-second rule. In wet conditions, it would probably be at least a minimum of a 4-second rule, but in ice and snow, you need to make that at least a 10-second rule. And you need to travel at the speed in which you can stop within the distance that you can see to be clear and on your own side of the road. That's really important. It has to be on your own side of the road. We don't want you actually veering around a vehicle to stop, because then you're putting yourself in danger from oncoming vehicles as well. So it's the distance at which you can see to be clear, and you must be able to stop within that distance. So speed limits on roads, we've talked about speeding in another presentation. They are limits, and they are limits that are set in ideal conditions. So dry road, no other hazards that are around, that is the sort of maximum speed limit that's for that condition. Obviously, when it gets to having rain or snow or ice, then those difficult conditions mean that the speed limit for that road is often far too fast. So we need to actually reduce our speed in those conditions. You also, because of the road conditions, need to think more about your braking and your acceleration. Now, you should always avoid harsh braking and harsh acceleration in any case, but this becomes incredibly important on bad road conditions, such as the rain, snow and ice. And you also need to think about how you steer as well, because steering in these conditions is really important. It needs to be smooth, because in icy or wet roads, anywhere where you have got possibly less traction with the road, as soon as you feed in steering, not only have you got the forces driving the car, you've got lateral forces coming in as you steer, and therefore the tyres have to be able to cope with both sets of forces while maintaining a steering contact with the road. So it needs to be smooth and well planned. So always be prepared to reduce your speed smoothly and in plenty of time, especially when approaching bends, because bends are one of the biggest hazards on the roads, and you need to be able to get round a bend safely. So let's talk specifically about rain at the moment. So rain, obviously the biggest effect of rain, less contact with the road, like I say, it does increase your stopping distance, but it also reduces your ability to see what's actually happening. So you do need more time to react to what's happening on the road. And like I said before, the 4-second rule would apply, if not more. So you must leave plenty of room in front of your vehicle. I accept you've got less control of what's happening behind your vehicle, but again, you can manage that by concentrating on that defensive zone and providing information to the people behind you about what you're actually doing. And the earlier you can do that, the better chance you've got of actually avoiding an accident from being hit behind. If it's raining, you need to use your windscreen wipers, you need to use your washer bottles, and if you've got your windscreen wipers on, you must be using dipped headlights. It's no longer acceptable to just drive with side lights or parking lights. You must have dipped headlights. And like I say, drive smoothly and plan your manoeuvres in plenty of time. Now we need to talk specifically about flooded roads. So roads are designed to actually take water away from the centre of the road. They have a curvature on them. So the deepest water is always going to be at the curb. So don't go into the curbs when there's standing water in the curbs, because that will be where a lot of the actual water is sitting. And if one set of tyres hits water, that will slow that set of tyres down, and the other tyres will continue to rotate at the speed, and you'll feel a pull on the steering wheel. You need to compensate for that pull on the steering wheel. If you do come across water that's across the road completely, if you're familiar with the area, you might be able to sort of say, well, I know the depth of the water here, and you may feel that it's safe to actually cross. But if you don't know the area, and you don't know how deep the water is, then don't attempt to cross it. If you're not sure of what's underneath the water, because remember, if it's just a patch of water, it might be holding a really massive pothole, and that would damage your tyre and your car possibly if you run over that. So if you're not sure of the water's depth in any way and you can't avoid it, then look for an alternative route. If you really must progress and you decide to risk it, then in a manual vehicle, put your car into first gear, keep the engine revs high and slip the clutch if you need to, but you need to ensure that the vehicle doesn't stall, and then form a bow wave of the water around your vehicle and look out for approaching vehicles. So we would always try to ensure an informal give way system for approaching vehicles. Now, one of the questions that I get asked quite a lot is, well, what happens if I'm in an automatic vehicle? If you're in an automatic vehicle, which do form the majority of cars these days, and certainly in the modern cars, you can put your auto box into manual mode, keep it in a low gear, and again, keep the revs high. You won't be able to slip the clutch because it is an automatic, but if you keep the revs high and form that bow wave again, still operating the informal give way with approaching vehicles, then you should be able to get through that water relatively safely. Once you're through the water, always remember to test your brakes. So wait until you're actually on the road. It will be wet, obviously, still, because you've just come through water, but gently try your brakes just to ensure that they are still working okay. Now, if you are unfortunate enough to hit water at speed, you could experience what we refer to as aquaplaning. And basically aquaplaning is caused by driving too fast into water and the tyres not being able to actually disperse the water from themselves quickly enough to actually allow contact with the road. So what you end up doing is your tyres lose contact with the road and you're in effect floating on a wedge of water. You won't have any control over your steering. Steering will be gone because you're just floating and skiing on water basically. So best thing to do is to avoid aquaplaning by reducing your speed in wet conditions. When you've got a lower speed, your car can disperse the water. You should remain in contact with the actual road. And it's important to ensure that you've got correct tyre pressure and tread depth, because that will actually maximise your tyre's ability to distribute that water and maintain its grip with the road. If you do find yourself aquaplaning, then don't go anywhere near the brakes. Lift your foot off the accelerator, let your car slow down, and as it slows down it will engage with the road again, and you will find that your steering will come back. So the best thing to do, avoid aquaplaning, but if you do aquaplane, foot off the accelerator, and then as the car slows down you will re-engage with the road and you'll find that you've got contact again. So avoid driving in fog unless your journey is absolutely necessary. Fog is one of the most dangerous weather conditions that we can experience, and quite often a single vehicle accident in fog turns into a multi-vehicle accident because people are driving too close. And that's for two reasons really. There's one school of thought that thinks you can see the car in front of you, you can see their lights so you know where they're going and you can use them to tell you where the road's going. They don't know any more than you do probably. And the other thing is that you can actually stand back from and develop a decent gap from the car in front, and then that provides you with that safety bubble. So remember, we're always trying to maintain a safety bubble, and if you're driving in fog, you know, we have to maintain an even bigger safety bubble. So like fog is a 10-second rule for the distance. You have to cope with what you can see in the road and adjust your speed to what you can actually see. So if you must really drive in the fog, then look at the weather forecast. You know, if you're making a journey, look at the weather forecast before you actually set off. Look at your local forecast, and maybe you'll need to look at the national forecast if you're planning on going on a long journey. The key thing here is, if there is any indication that you will be driving in fog, you need to leave plenty of additional time for that journey. As I've said before, check your car before you set off. It's incredibly important in fog that your lights are working, including your fog lights. Again, reduce your speed and keep it down. If you need to use fog lamps, then put your fog lights on. Certainly rear fog lights. If you've got front fog lights as well, use them. But remember, when you actually come out of fog and visibility improves, remember to switch off your fog lights because they can dazzle the car behind you. If you need to, use the demisters and windscreen wipers on your car because they can assist you when driving through fog. Like I've said, don't get too close to the car in front, and always be able to brake safely to indicate to cars behind you that you are slowing down. Now, one of the other things that you might want to do in foggy conditions is to actually switch off any noises. So if you've got the radio on or music playing, Apple CarPlay, whatever you may have, you may want to switch those off because you need to concentrate on your driving when you're in foggy conditions. When you're approaching junctions, crossroads and junctions, anywhere that you might come to a stop, it might be an idea to open a window so that you can actually listen for other traffic. Sometimes in foggy conditions you can actually hear other traffic before you may be able to see it. So, make use of all the senses you've got. Obviously the main information that we take is through vision. We see what's in front of us and to the side and behind with the use of the mirrors. But also we've got, we can hear. So, use that if you need to. Just roll down the window or use your controls to lower the window and listen for other traffic. Again, like I've said, you may come out of fog and visibility improves, but you need to be careful because you might, in patchy fog, run into another patch of fog. So don't come out of fog and immediately increase your speed because you just don't know what conditions you're likely to meet. If you do break down in fog, then you need to inform the police as soon as possible. Get the vehicle off the road as much as you can, but never park on the road in fog and never leave it without warning lights of some kind, especially if it's on the wrong side of the road. And if you do get out of the vehicle, get away from the vehicle and always behind the direction of travel. The last thing you want is someone to hit your car and push it into you as you're standing in front. So always get out, stand well away from the car and behind the car's direction of travel. Now, especially this time of year, sort of November time, we can experience low sun. And low sun can really be a big problem, especially if you're driving into it. Winter sun causes those difficulties where the angle of the sun is often too low for you to actually use your visor to help you. So again, if you're blinded by the glare, the first thing that you should do, check your mirrors to see what's behind you and reduce your speed. Reduce the effect of glare by keeping both your inside and outside of your windscreen clean and grease free. It's really important to have good all-round visibility, so make sure your glass is cleaned on a regular basis. If you do wear sunglasses and prescription lenses if you need to, then obviously that will help when you're driving into the sun, but when you are past that sort of situation, then you should take your certainly sunglasses off, because they will impair your vision because of them being sunglasses and in normal lighting conditions. So remember, you can use them, but remember to take them off when it's appropriate. So we're coming to the quiz. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, but hopefully you'll find the answers interesting. So we're on a motorway here. We can obviously see that we're on going towards Gatwick, probably on the M25. So you're in your car, you're heading off to the motorway. You may be going away on holiday if you're lucky. What's the danger of driving in the rain? So hitting puddles, reduced visibility, or increased stopping distances in the wet. And the answer for this question is actually all three. All three are hazards. So be aware. You can see from this this photo that we have got spray on the road. So you could hit a puddle. You definitely will get reduced visibility because of the rain, and you should leave that increased stopping distance of at least 4 seconds in the rain. So question 2, which of these 3 severe weather conditions is responsible for more deaths on the road? Snow, fog, or rain? And the answer to this one is rain. And the reason that rain is the answer is that it's more prevalent in the UK. So we get rain far more often than we get snow or fog. And it's just for that reason, really. People not adapting their driving to wet conditions, and we do get, you know, a significant amount of rain. We've had a number of storms come through this year, so we have had to deal with wet roads and flooding as well. So at 50 miles an hour, the stopping distance is 53 metres. Now, I don't like quoting distances because people have real problems, and I certainly have real problems estimating what 53 metres would be. So it's 13 car lengths. So what is your top stopping distance in the wet as opposed to on a dry road? So is it an extra 5 car lengths, about 73 metres, at least double, or the same? Well, the indication here is the 2-second rule, 4-second rule and 10-second rule. So 2 seconds in dry conditions on good roads and at least double on wet roads. So the 4-second rule, and it's at least double. So again, we're driving in the rain. Stats show that you're around 30 times more likely to be injured by a road accident in the rain compared to snow, because it is more prevalent. But how often does it rain in England on average? Is it once a week, 3 times every 2 weeks, or about once every 3 days? Well, on average, it's once every 3 days. Yeah, we do get that much rain in the UK on average, in an average year. Okay, so now we're starting to talk about ice now. So when the temperature drops to freezing, where will ice form first? Will it be bridges, overpasses, low-lying areas, areas that lie in shadow, or all of the above, or some of the above? And I'll give you a clue here. The answer is actually 2 of them. And the answers are bridges and overpasses. And this is because you've got cold conditions coming down from the top of the bridge or the overpass, and cold conditions rising from the ground. Therefore, you've got 2 lots of cold air hitting the bridge or the overpass. So those are the places where you need to be really careful. If you see a bridge or you see an overpass, you can pretty much guarantee that that's where it's going to, if there is any ice around, that's where you're going to find it initially. The low-lying areas won't be far behind, and areas in shadow won't be far behind, but it's bridges and overpasses where it will form first. So if anyone's been unfortunate enough to have a skid, they can happen at any time, and obviously they're caused by your tyres losing grip on the road. So if you are unfortunate enough to meet these conditions, and if your car does begin to skid, what should you do? Turn the steering wheel in the direction you want the car to go. Ease your foot off the accelerator while looking and steering smoothly in the direction you want the car to go. Or pump your brakes and steer in the direction that you want to go. And there is one that you should do and one that you should definitely not do. Well, the one that you should definitely not do is pump your brakes. That's the worst thing that you can do. What you really need to do is to lose speed, and you do that by taking your foot off the accelerator. The car will start to slow down. And while you're doing that, you should be looking and steering smoothly in the direction you want the car to go. Now, you may have to do that multiple times to regain control of the car, but hopefully by then you're at a low enough speed to actually bring yourself back onto the direction that you were originally going, or at least be safe. So antifreeze, this is the best mix of water to antifreeze in a car's cooling system. So this is not your washer bottles, this is your cooling system. What do we think the best mix is? So this is assuming that we bought concentrate and we need to mix it with water. Would we mix 20% water and 80% antifreeze, 50% water and 50% antifreeze, or 80% water and 20% antifreeze? Or would we use the excuse that we're not a mechanic so we wouldn't do it? That's not what we're looking for in this answer. It's actually 50% water and 50% antifreeze. That is the best mix for your car's cooling system. So what is the minimum tyre depth you should have in icy and snowy conditions? And this is not the legal limit. This is what the minimum should be in snowy and icy conditions. Is it 5 millimeters, 3 millimeters, or 1.6 millimeters? Well, the legal minimum is 1.6 millimeters, but actually I always change my tyres when they get to 3 millimeters, and 3 millimeters is the minimum you should have in icy and snowy conditions. If you've got 5 millimeters, great. If you've got more than that, even better. But in icy and snowy conditions, it should be a minimum of 3 millimeters. So you come out to your car in the morning, it's been icy overnight, it may have been a bit of snow, there's a layer of snow on your car, as it's shown here. So you need to de-ice your car's windscreen. And actually you need to de-ice all of your car's glass. You need good all-round visibility. So what would we use to actually de-ice your car? A credit card, boiling water from a kettle, your partner's jumper, they wouldn't be very happy I don't think, and a de-icing spray and a scraper. So the answer here is a de-icing spray and a scraper. And some people would just say actually a scraper, because de-icing spray, if you do get it onto your paintwork, can damage your paintwork. You need to be really careful if you do use it. But at least a scraper. Definitely not your partner's jumper, wouldn't go down well. Boiling water is a definite no-no because it may actually crack the windscreen. And a credit card, well, you could use it because it is in effect a form of a scraper, but it would take you a long time with a small credit card. So really the answer here is a de-icing spray if you want to use it, and a scraper. Now this is an interesting one. At what temperature can black ice form? So this is the ice like we've seen on the photo here that really you can't see. It's the same colour as tarmac. And different manufacturers of cars have a different view on this. So some cars will warn you at 3 degrees Celsius, BMWs do. Some will warn you at 4 degrees Celsius, and I believe Mercedes do at 4. So at what temperature could black ice form? And the answer is 4 degrees. So if you're in a Mercedes, it will warn you at 4 degrees. If you're in a BMW, you need to be careful because it won't warn you until 3 degrees. But any temperature around about there, you need to take that into account because you are either at or very close to the temperature when a black ice can form. And black ice is not great. I've fallen in black ice and ended up in hospital. So, you know, you need to be careful as a pedestrian, let alone as a driver. So be cognizant of that. So a police officer stops you for some reason, and he finds that you've got no fluid, or you've got fluid that's frozen and you can't use it in your washer bottle, what can he actually do, or she could actually do? Nothing. It's not an offence. He could give you 3 penalty points on your licence. He could give you a £100 fine but no penalty points, or you can get 3 points and a £100 fine. This is classed as driving without due care and attention, and there is a rule in the Highway Code that explains that is driving without due care and attention, because if something comes over your windscreen and blocks your vision, you've got no water to clear the actual vision, you're driving without due care and attention. And he can, and she can, give you 3 points and a £100 fine. So go out and check and make sure that you've got your water bottle full. So, four-wheel drive vehicles. There's a lot of myths around four-wheel drive vehicles. So is this true or false? A four-wheel drive vehicle allows you to brake faster in wintry conditions. It's false, though its great attraction does allow you to accelerate faster. Or it's true, and four-wheel drive means that you can do anything you want in any road conditions. Now the answer, not surprisingly really, is false. Although it does give you greater traction to allow you to accelerate faster, it's still no Lamborghini or Porsche or Ferrari. You will accelerate quicker than a two-wheel drive car, but it doesn't mean that you can brake any faster in wintry conditions. So I'm going to ask this question, but no one in any of the presentations that I've done has ever got this absolutely correct. You can have a guess and probably be fairly close, but using statistics from UK accident companies, which is the most dangerous day of the year to drive? And I mean that by a date, not just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or etc. A date. So, like I say, I've never had anyone give me the exact answer, but it's actually the 29th of January. And that's for a number of reasons. Accidents tend to be more prevalent towards the weekend, especially on a Friday. Friday is the most dangerous day of the week. And you've got shorter days on January the 29th, a weekend, and generally the weather is not exactly great. So remember now, when we come up to the 29th of January next year, be careful, it is a dangerous day to be on the road. So this one again is relating to your tyres, and it's a question that I have to put a caveat on. So as temperatures drop, so can the pressure in your tyres. Is that true or is that false? And the answer is, if you filled your tyre with air, as most people do, it's true, because air actually reacts to temperature, and you will lose pressure as temperature goes down. It's not by a great deal, but it will actually decrease. Now the caveat to that is if you fill your tyres with nitrogen, because nitrogen, which is offered by some tyre services these days, is an inert gas, and it doesn't react to temperature. So for an average correctly inflated car tyre, how much of that tyre is in contact with the road at any given point in time? An area equivalent to a piece of A4 paper, an area equivalent to a man's size 9 shoe, or an area equivalent to a book of first class stamps, or an area of 88.9 square centimetres. And the answer is an area equivalent to a man's size 9 shoe. So just think about that for a moment. Your contact with the road when you're driving, whatever speed you're driving, the actual contact with the road is 4 size 9 shoes. That's the equivalent area of contact that you've got at any one point in time. So I hope you found that interesting, and thanks for watching.